All right, I'd now like to welcome on a very special guest, longtime friend of the program, Ethan Levy. Ethan, what's up?
How's it going, Blake?
It's very exciting. This is the first NFL episode. This is going to be the NFL preview episode. We're just going to run through basically every team in the entire NFL and talk about what we like or don't like about them, give out some division winners, some win totals, some playoff picks, Super Bowl picks, all of that. So it's going to be a comprehensive NFL preview.
Very.
It's been basically all college football from me so far this summer. So I'm excited to talk NFL.
Let's do it. I'm excited as well.
Yeah, we have a lot to get to, so we should, I guess, just get right into it. And I think it's only fitting for me this year that we start with the AFC East.
Sure.
Um, it's maybe the most intriguing division in the NFL this year. Obviously, the Bills have owned the division the last couple of years, but that has not been translating to playoff success. The Dolphins kind of emerged the last couple of years as at least a team that's fishing for those wild card spots. And then obviously the Jets now with Aaron Rodgers, the expectations are very high. And the Patriots, who until the last couple of years dominated this division for 2 decades, are now pretty clearly the fourth best team in the division. I've talked about Aaron Rodgers enough this summer, and me and you will just get into a fight if we start talking about Aaron Rodgers,
100%.
um, which which we're gonna have to do. But let's start at the top with the Bills. They're still the favorites to win the division, despite Aaron Rodgers being there. And I think this is going to be a make or break kind of year for the Bills. I think they're going to have more pressure on them than ever. One with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets now being more competitive, and the Dolphins still being really competitive. But also just their lack of playoff success. I think the pressure is very much on the Bills to get the at least I don't know the AFC Championship game, and I don't know where do you see the Bills and the whole kind of division falling?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pressure is also equally on the Jets. I mean, it's never been
Hmm.
more obvious that the window is right now. I mean, you have Rodgers for this year. You've got Rodgers for hopefully your guys' sake next year as well. That's the window. And the Jets were a good team, despite the fact that they didn't have a quarterback. They were still eking out wins. The defense played hard. They got really two of my favorite, I hate to say it, players on offense with Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall, but we'll table them for when we're done with the Bills. I like the Bills to win this division. I know FanDuel's hanging plus 120. It's something that I personally would play. It's one of the few teams that I sort of looked at on the analytics side in terms of strength of schedule and didn't really agree. I know that, people can make that argument about a lot of teams every single year, but I sort of look at their schedule and I'm like, well, within the division, yeah, they're in a good division, but the other divisions that they're playing, these are games that they should win. Like they should beat the Bucks, they should beat the Patriots twice. As you probably know, I'm not very bullish on Trevor Lawrence. Like I think they should beat the Jaguars, especially at home. They have the Commanders, they've got the Raiders, they've got the Broncos, who were awful last year, and even if they're a little better, Bill should still beat them. Like I genuinely see this team as like an 11 or 12 win team at worst, and that should be good enough to win this division.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonable to say that the Jets, like Jets and Bills, could split. The Dolphins and Bills could
Sure.
split. The Jets and Dolphins could split. Like those three teams could split,
Mm-hmm.
and then whoever can beat the Patriots twice would then have like the
Right.
bigger edge to win the division. On top of everything else, on the record, I have to say that the Jets are my pick to win the division.
Of
Although I'm
course.
not like overly concerned. Like I don't think the winner of the AFC East will have the one seed. I think the Chiefs are going to run away with the one seed. We can get to that later, but I think the Chiefs are going to be the one seed. So obviously, you still want home field, but like I I don't think it's like the end of the world if the Jets don't win the division. I think they're
No, I think they're a
really
playoff
capable
lock
of.
regardless.
Yeah.
They'll get in a wild card anyway. as long as Rodgers is healthy.
Yeah.
So, if I was a Jets fan like you, I wouldn't be too worried about it. But, we're talking divisional. So that my pick is the Bills.
Yeah. So I'm picking the Jets to win the division. I'm not betting the Jets to win the division just because I think them and the Bills, I think
Smart.
it is a bit of a,
Separate your head and your heart.
yeah, I think it's a bit of a coin flip. But I did make one bet on this division, and the only place I found that you could bet this is DraftKings, but maybe it's available somewhere else. At minus 120, I bet the Patriots to finish fourth in the division.
Oh,
It was only minus 120, which I thought was a kind of a crazy price. I think
a very crazy
the,
price considering they're what, plus 800 to win the division, maybe more.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe it's like obviously there could be. I think if Aaron Rodgers plays the entire season and if Tua plays 75% of the season, then I don't see how either of those teams finish with a worse record than the Patriots, who
Right.
are just doing weird things, cutting Bailey Zappi and Malik Cunningham. I know they re-signed them both to the practice squad, but on
Right.
their active roster,
They
Mac
only have
Jones
two
is
running backs. Like, I don't
only
understand
quarterback.
what they're doing in terms of roster construction. Like, it's just Ramondre Stevenson and Zeke Elliott. They've got one quarterback. Obviously, these things will change. I just don't understand what the strategy is.
Yeah, and I'm the biggest Mac Jones hater on the planet. I think
Same
he's
here.
going to be out of the
Yeah.
NFL in 3 or 4 years. So
No,
I
he's a
think
big
they're going
white
to
guy.
be really
He's
bad.
gonna be a clipboard guy for sure.
Yeah, you're probably right. Alabama guy,
Yeah.
even if he fails with the Patriots, they'll be like, oh, he played
Right.
under Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. Like he
Yeah.
knows the game. Like
Yep.
he'll get that whole thing. But he won't be an NFL starter in the next 3 or 4 years.
I would
Um,
agree with that.
so I think that's a good price to get on the Patriots minus 120. And some of these teams like the Bills and the Jets and even the Dolphins, we can talk about a little more when we talk like playoffs and
Sure.
kind of where we see those teams falling there. So that I guess that's it for the AFC East. I got the Jets, you got the Bills. I do think that this is one of two divisions, one in the AFC, one in the NFC, that I have three teams making the playoffs. I think the Dolphins and the Jets will both get those wild card spots, or
Yep.
Bills, Dolphins, vice versa. So it should be a really fun division, starting with Monday Night Football, Jets Bills
Absolutely.
next
Banger to
week.
start the season.
Uh-huh. Uh, AFC South is next. This is one of the more wide open divisions in the league, I would say. And by wide open, usually that means bad. Like even though the AFC East has three playoff teams, I don't use the term wide open. I really save that if a division I think is really bad. The Jags are the favorites. You just talked about how you're not a Trevor Lawrence believer. I'm also not a Trevor Lawrence believer. I'm not a Jaguars believer in
Yeah, well, you
general.
also got that Clemson hate in your blood, so I'm sure it
I
carried over a
know,
bit. Yeah,
I know, but I try to use some unbiased part of my brain, and I
sure.
still just like don't quite see it. I feel like he had like a good half of a season last year, and all of a sudden he's like being talked
Yep,
about the same as like Justin Herbert, who's had like three
100%.
very good seasons, which
We
doesn't
did the
make sense to
NYG
me.
podcast yesterday, and Weiss was talking about Trevor Lawrence being top five, and we got into like a yelling argument. He's not even top five in the AFC, so I
Oh,
don't I don't even understand. I don't get it personally. And not to jump ahead of you, but this is probably my favorite bet in terms of divisional on the board. Give me the Titans plus 310. I don't get
me
it.
too.
Vrabel is one of the best coaches in the NFL. He constantly has his guys ready to play, especially on defense. I'm really not that worried about their defense. On offense, they get Hopkins. I'm sure that Vrabel was not too thrilled with the AJ Brown trade. They get back probably a better alpha wide receiver, even at his current age. Older than AJ Brown, I get it. He was still very productive coming back from a 6-game suspension on a dog shit Cardinals team that had no quarterback. Tannehill's going to be healthy. When he's allowed to, they can air it out. He's got a great arm. Derrick Henry healthy. I really, really like that value at plus 310. The coaching quarterback is average to can be good. They've got receiving weapons now. Derrick Henry is just a perennial beast. I like it. To lay the minus 155 or whatever it is on the Jags, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Give me the Titans.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's your favorite pick because that is one of the couple of division bets that I actually
There we
made
go.
in real
And we,
life,
we didn't
not just an
pre-plan
actual
this.
pick. No.
Okay.
And yeah, it's not even like from a value perspective, betting it, it's not even a question that like it's on, I'm looking at DraftKings, it's plus 350
There you go.
versus
Shop around,
minus one,
folks. Get the best line.
minus 155 with the Jags. Like that's not even a question. But if they were both plus 100, I would be picking the Titans. Like I
Yeah.
just think the Titans are the better team, top to bottom. I think they're the better coach team. Um, but I do think it's an interesting division, top to bottom. The Texans, I think the Texans will be better than last year, which isn't saying much since they were actively
Right.
tanking until the last game of the season when they decided they wanted to stop
Yeah.
actively tanking and get CJ Stroud instead of Bryce Young by losing that game.
Which is
I think
fine
they
by
will
me,
be
but
better. Yeah, me too. I think
I'm a
they made
Stroud
some
guy.
good moves. Um, but I think their season basically will come down to how quickly CJ Stroud is ready to be an NFL quarterback. He played well in their last preseason game, and after that, they announced him as the starter. I think he was going to be the starter no matter what, but they didn't announce it until after the last preseason game where he
Yep.
did play well. And having Davis Mills as the backup, like if things aren't going great or if like I don't where CJ Stroud is right now isn't a huge drop off to Davis Mills, so that's not the end of the world. I think CJ Stroud can be really, really good, and I hope he picks up on it quick. Um, and then the Colts are a team that are just totally like another team where I don't really know what's going on with them right now. The Jonathan Taylor thing, where they couldn't get a trade for him, and now he isn't eligible to play the first 4 weeks of the season. And their running back room is ridiculous. It's
Just
like
a bunch of
Deion
random dudes.
Jackson and
Evan
yeah, like
Hall, who I had
random,
never heard of until a week ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, random guys. So Colts have something weird going on. I think those two teams, even if CJ Stroud has a good rookie year, I don't think the Texans are quite making it to even like the playoff wild
Yep.
card kind of conversation. Neither are the Colts. So these would be the two teams, Jags and Titans, and the value on Titans is hard to pass up.
100% agree.
Um,
Same page.
Next division is arguably you could say the AFC East, but top to bottom, AFC North. This might be the best division in football. It is a division where all four teams you could make an argument that team could win the division, and some are a longer shot than others. But I wouldn't like laugh you out of the room for making an argument for any of the four, especially for betting one of the four any of the four teams based on the value that's there. Like if
Well,
you well, all right, you're a clear hater of one of at least one of these teams.
yeah,
So
it's
go
the
ahead.
Pittsburgh and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
Listen, I can see the argument because much like Vrabel, Tomlin, very good defensive coach, always has his guys ready to play. They could have, me at quarterback, and they'll still find a way to eke out some of these gross, disgusting games. However, this is a division with plenty of other talented coaches, far more talented quarterbacks than Kenny Pickett, far better offensive weapons than the Steelers have. So, you're saying you could make the argument for all four. I sort of just gave that for the Steelers, like, yeah, they're well coached. They'll always be in it, but I think the other three teams are just far superior.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the Steelers more than you. I think I'm a little bit higher on Kenny Pickett. I don't think he's going to be like the best quarterback in the league by any means, but I think he could have a really really solid season. I think he could be just as good as Trevor Lawrence. So top five in the league, I guess. Um, But at the top of the AFC North, obviously the Bengals um, have went to the Super Bowl, went to the AFC Championship game. They've been kind of the opposite of the Bills, where they've not been as dominant in the regular season, but in the postseason have translated it to serious success. Um, and then the Ravens, who I think are one of the most intriguing teams in the NFL this year. They kind of
Agreed.
just got lost in the shuffle last year with Lamar just being hurt and the whole thing with his contract, where it's like, oh, is he actually hurt or is he just like not really playing? And finally, and then we weren't sure if he was going to get a contract over the summer and he was going to get traded, all this different stuff. So they signed Lamar. They made a lot of moves. OBJ, which was a great move, I think. They drafted Zay
Zay
Flowers, which I think
Flowers.
was a great draft pick. This is going to be the best receiving core Lamar's ever had as the Ravens quarterback. Um, and they
Don't
are my
forget
pick
Todd
to win
Monken.
this.
Me as
Yeah,
well.
Todd Monken. They're my pick to win the AFC North. Todd Monken, who was the offensive coordinator at Georgia for both of their national championship wins, has moved to Baltimore to the NFL. And I think he's a great hire over Greg Roman, who I think was
Fantastic hire.
big time holding
Fantastic.
back the Ravens offense. And yeah, I think part of it is the health of Joe Burrow. He, I guess, is going to play week one. I'm not entirely convinced he's going to play week one. I guess we'll have to see. But obviously, he's just had injury issues his whole career since the ACL. So that's just one small factor. Lamar has also kind of had injury issues, so I guess you kind of have to be fair, make that same argument. But
Sure.
I think there are question marks around the Bengals. I think defensively there are some bigger question marks around the Bengals.
Definitely.
Um, which the Bengals defense is weird. I feel like every regular season their numbers aren't that great, but then they get to the playoffs and they just kind of make stops when they need to make stops, and that's how they've been successful in the postseason. But I really like this Ravens team, and seems like that's your pick as well.
It's also my pick. I think there are a few factors, some of which you mentioned. Todd Monken likes to go fast. And when you have a quarterback like Lamar, who's the biggest run threat in the league, and a finally healthy J.K. Dobbins, who, by the way, when I went back and I watched his highlights from the last 4 weeks of last year when he was healthy, which was really just him at 80%. He was running with a limp. Like it was almost like hilarious to watch. Like he's got great vision, he's explosive, but he was getting caught. It was clear he wasn't 100% even, and he was still averaging over 5 yards per carry through the final 4 weeks. So when you go fast with the running ability of Lamar, the running ability of J.K. Dobbins, you add OBJ, you add Zay Flowers through the draft, you have Mark Andrews, who is arguably, if they're going to throw the ball, I think he could have a better statistical season than Travis Kelce. So call him the top 2 tight end in the league. Harbaugh, just every year, just like some of the coaches that we mentioned. And if you're putting it up, you think, oh well, it's close for me between the Ravens and the Bengals. Sorry, I'm taking Harbaugh over Zach any day. And it's like, okay, that's my bet. Plus two, over 200, I think, plus 210, plus 215. I'm sure you can get a better price at some books. I know we haven't really talked about the Browns yet. I think they'll be improved. I think we'd spoken about it. You really like Deshaun this year. Or no, I don't think we've spoken
I
about it.
said that.
Who said that actually? Fitz
No.
DM'd me on Twitter. He was like,
All
yo,
right.
Deshaun's one of my guys this year. So no,
I
we
will
haven't.
never say that Deshaun is one of my guys. I would
No,
like you to formally retract
I
that statement.
retract that. Sorry, another Clemson guy. Um,
Clemson
but
guy and maybe some other things that make me
and
not a
some
fan
maybe
of
some other
Deshaun Watson.
things. Yeah, that's fair. But point stands. I think the Ravens are the best team in that division. I expect them to win that division. That's my pick.
Yeah, I like the Ravens. I think the if the Ravens win the division, I think the Bengal will get to it. I think the Bengals will still be a playoff team, but I think yeah, it's going to be an interesting. I think this division could get hurt by like every team like splitting games with each other, and that could hurt with whoever doesn't win the division trying to get into a wild card spot because you don't have that team you can beat up on and get two automatic wins against.
Yep.
But if a team can, if you can beat the Steelers twice or beat the Browns twice as one of those top two teams, then that's a huge advantage. I will just throw it in right now, just because it kind of goes along with this Ravens argument. I don't love win totals in the NFL. I bet a lot of win totals in college football because I think there's so much like variance of a team could do so
For
much
sure.
better or worse than expected. Whereas in the NFL, barring injuries, you kind of know what you're going to get. It's not as much value in the market. But I did bet the Bengals under 11 and a half wins,
Okay.
which kind of goes along with the bet of the Ravens to win the division. I think
Sure.
the Bengals are just going to take a bit of a step back this year. I think they've exceeded their talent level the last couple of years, and we're going to see it come back to earth a little bit, especially with
Sure.
the division being so competitive. Um, the AFC West, the last division in the AFC, Chiefs have dominated the AFC West for the past few years. Uh, it's really an ugly division outside of the Chiefs. The Broncos were obviously a mess last year. I don't expect them to be much better. The Raiders are really bad. Seeing Jimmy G outside of the Shanahan system with the lack of talent that the Raiders already have, I think could be kind of ugly for the Raiders offense.
Yeah. I mean, listen,
And then
I'm not advocating for the Raiders here, but McDaniel does have familiarity with Jimmy G. So you have to think he understands what he's getting. Um, Not that it would matter, but
not
if you're looking for a reason to be optimistic about the Raiders, that's really all I can think of.
yeah, I agree. And because nothing else is very good. But then you do have the Chargers, who are obviously a trendy pick, have been a trendy pick for multiple years, and still haven't really been able to do anything. Justin Herbert is still kind of stuck there, where he's doing these ridiculous things and putting up huge numbers, but the team is just not succeeding. Which I think you have to look at the coach in that case. But I think, I mean, I'm not going to lay a minus 165 and actually bet the Chiefs to win the division, but I don't see a path where the Chiefs don't win the division unless Patrick Mahomes is not playing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you can make the same argument for the Chargers. Like plus 300, it's not enough for me to lay money there. I would need probably like 400, maybe 375. I think Herbert's going to have a monster statistical year if he's healthy. If Eckler's healthy, if Keenan Allen's healthy, they've got a lot of health issues there. But when healthy, I think they've got probably one of the best offensive arsenals in the league. Throw in Quentin Johnson, first round pick this year, and I mean, there's no reason Herbert shouldn't. Throw out a wild prediction: Herbert over 45 touchdowns this year. Genuinely think that there's a world in which, if he gets a little help from Eckler in the receiving game and he runs in a few, I genuinely think there's a world where he could possibly touch 50, which is crazy to say because, I mean, who were the last couple guys to do that? Brady and Peyton. So your argument there is Herbert and the weapons, but I would still need a bit of a bigger price in order to play that.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of two teams, which they're better than the other team that I'm going to talk about later. But they're one of two teams in the NFL that I think are head coach away from being a really good
Sure.
team. The other one is in the NFC that I think the Chargers could definitely make the playoffs as a wild card team. The AFC's loaded. It's going to be tough to get one of those wild card spots, even if you're a good team. But I think if they had a different head coach, I think they could start to challenge the Chiefs in the division, and
Sure.
but not quite. The next team I'm going to talk about is actually in the NFC East.
Okay.
I could be talking about anybody. Who knows?
Well, if you're talking
Um,
about coaching, the answer to your question is the Dallas Cowboys.
do you know what's crazy?
It's not?
I The answer to my question is if they had a different head coach, I would be picking the Washington Commanders to get the seventh seed in the NFC playoffs.
You're smoking that Sam Howell crack, aren't you?
Hmm.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
have been for years.
Go to rehab, Blake.
No, I love
Yes,
Sam Howell.
you're
All he does is
drugs.
win games
Okay,
in
are
the
we
fourth
doing the
quarter.
NFC East? Are we doing the NFC East?
Yeah, we're doing the NFC
Okay,
East. Let's
we're
do it.
doing the NFC East. All right, let's do the NFC East. Get off your Sam Howell high horse and let's be serious for a minute. Who's your who are your picks in the NFC East?
Okay. I mean, I like I said, I'm not even picking them to make the playoffs. So I'm saying if
Okay,
they had a
fine.
different head coach, it would be a different story. I'm not picking them anywhere near winning the division. Um, so I think the Eagles probably win the division again. I think it's a safe bet. I think they're still probably the best team in the NFC on paper. I do think there is a little bit of value on the Cowboys to win the division at 2-1 if you can get that kind of
Mm-hmm.
number. I think the Eagles will take a little bit of a step back from the team or from how they played last year. I still think the NFC is just bad, and they're deservedly the favorites to win the NFC again.
Yep.
But I think the Cowboys, if like you did talk about coaching, and you're right about the Cowboys too. You can make the same argument for the Cowboys, but also quarterback play. It's really going to come down to Dak if he can try to be good Dak for a majority of the season, especially in
Yep.
big games when they need him to be, and not throw a ridiculous amount of interceptions. I think that the Cowboys could win the division conceivably. I do like their roster top to
Me
bottom. I
too.
think it's going to be much improved from last year. So, but you're the NFC East guy. I'm just going to let you go.
Sure. So I think the Eagles win the division. We agree there. We also agree on the Cowboys. I would because of the McCarthy factor, I would need closer, I don't know, call it between 200 plus 200 and plus 250 to actually feel that the value is there. Cowboys defense is, I think, better than what they showed in many games last year. They have probably a top 5 pass rusher in Micah Parsons, Lawrence as well. Their interior guys are pretty good. Trayvon Diggs is hit or miss. I don't know. It really is a toss up between which unit shows up on a week to week basis. But you're right. On the offense, if Dak is healthy and he's good to very good, they have Tony Pollard, who was better than Zeke last year, finally getting a lion's share of the carries. Their offensive line is good every year. And I feel like no one's talking about this. They added Brandon Cooks for like nothing, a guy who is basically a lock on the worst teams he's played on to go for 1,000 yards. So now you're playing him with Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. Like that is a very, very underrated receiving group. So if I'm looking for value in the NFC East, yeah, I think the Eagles probably win the division, but I don't think the Cowboys are a bad bet.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think the Cowboys could be right there. I think the Cowboys are definitely a playoff team in the NFC. But we got to talk about the Giants,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. Your squad, the one team in the NFCs that I'm not concerned about the coaching. Brian
Sure.
Daboll's the man, undoubtedly the man. Um, but it's an interesting year for the Giants because made the playoffs last year, re-signed Daniel Jones, but then go into this
Won a,
year,
won a playoff game last year
won a playoff game, we should say,
on
not
the
just made the
road
playoffs.
against the 13
Yeah,
win team.
that had Kirk Cousins playing quarterback. That's an
Against
important
the 13
distinction.
win team.
Um, and but then it's weird to go on the road and beat a 13 win team in the playoffs. You re-sign your quarterback, but then you go into this year being like, oh, we're probably not going to make the playoffs, and like that's okay. It's a strange place to be in.
Very, very strange. Listen, I can give my spiel. I'll try to keep it abbreviated. The Giants window truly opens next year. Right now, about 60% of the roster is made up of Joe Shane's guys. Uh, then like 47%, there's only one Jerry Reese player left. And that's Sterling Shepard. So you need one more year to fully remake the roster, but it's clear that they think that this is a good team that can win games. You don't go out there and spend big money on Bobby O to play linebacker and expect that this is going to be a bad team. I think they are going to have the most fun offense in the league. And majority of that is because of the coaching. I think Mike Kafka is going to be undoubtedly the first coordinator poached for a head coaching job next offseason. I don't know if you can bet that. If you can, put every dollar you have on that. He was already getting interviews after last season. So fantastic offensive coordinator. But Daniel Jones, I know we're talking real football, but in terms of like production, he was a top 7 fantasy quarterback last year. Saquon's back. He's healthy. They went out and traded for Waller, who's been eating in camp and preseason. So they finally have that quote unquote wide receiver one. And they have a markedly improved wide receiver group from last year. They had Richie James, getting 15 targets a game last year. They went out, they draft Jalen Hyatt, Sterling Shepard's healthy, Wan'Dale Robinson looks to be healthy. They went out and they got Paris Campbell. Like they got a bunch of guys, and the creativity is there. The offensive line should be a little bit improved. They're going to be fun. Problem is, they're in a really tough division, and their schedule is not particularly easy. I know Vegas has their win total set at around 8.5, which I think is very reasonable. I think this is a team that can win anywhere between 7 and 10 games. If they're on the higher end of that, then they can probably sneak into a wild card in a really bad NFC, just as they did last year. But a lot of people seem to forget that last year, this team won a record number of 1-score games, where for once in the last 5 or 6 years, everything just seemed to go their way. Turnovers, game-winning drives, kickers, missing kicks that the Giants have had their hearts ripped out over the last few years. So I think this is going to be a good team. If everything goes right, they could teeter on very good. And I think that the win total is where it should be. So I don't know what they are to make the playoffs. If you have that number, please state it, and I'll let you know if I think that that's good enough value. But I don't anticipate them winning the division.
I can give you that number in 5 seconds.
Sure. I think
Plus 160 to make the playoffs.
I think that's great value. In a really, really weak NFC, if they can get to 10 wins again, I like it. So that's something that I would consider. And again, like if things don't go right with the Cowboys, what if the Giants take both those games? I think the Giants take both games from the Commanders. That's 4 wins right there. I think there's plenty of other beatable teams at the midway and at the later point of the season. I may dabble in the playoff bet. So,
yeah, looking at the other teams that are kind of going to be most likely going to be in that wild card, those late wild card spots in the NFC. The Bears are the Bears are plus 155, and the Giants are plus 160. So you're getting better value on them.
There you go.
The Packers are plus 180. Yeah, I don't know. I think the value's there if you think that
Absolutely.
if they hit their upside. Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have them in the playoffs. But I think that like we've been saying, the NFC is, after you get past the top couple teams, it's a pretty big drop
It's
off.
wide open.
So anybody could come in and take one of those last couple wild card spots. And what else was I going to say? I don't know. I guess that's it on the NFC East.
Okay.
I don't need to go too much into my Sam Howell. I've always been a Sam Howell guy. I think. Oh, what I was going to say about the Giants is just, yeah, I'm not betting them to make the playoffs or their win total or anything, but I do think you'll get a lot of good week by week spots to bet them this year when they're
Yeah.
underdogs against certain teams, and like you said, against the Cowboys, for example, or even in spots against the Eagles or different teams in the NFC. I think there will be spots where they're too big of underdogs because of where they're at, and they'll be really competitive in those games and be good to bet week by week. But the NFC South, I think, is safely the worst division in the NFL.
Yes.
Really, really bad. Who won the NFC South last year? The Saints did
I
still?
couldn't even tell you.
I don't even know. I was literally just like, one of these teams was in the playoffs last year. The Bucks won at 8-9 last year.
Right.
Um, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Um, so Bucks had a losing record and won the division last year, and I think the division is somehow worse than it was last year, despite a
Yeah.
team winning. Because the team that won is now the worst team in the division. They're 10-1 to win the division this year, the Bucks. The Saints are the favorite, plus 105. Obviously, they brought in Derek Carr, which is a perfectly fine
Right.
move. It's in this division, you now have the best quarterback in the division, I guess. But in the NFC playoffs, you're going to have maybe the worst quarterback in the playoffs. So it's
Probably.
like it's well, one of the bottom two or three, depending on who else makes it. So it's a weird spot to be in. The Saints are my pick. It's not exciting. I like this Falcons team everywhere except the quarterback position. I'm not sold on Desmond Ritter.
And the
I think
coach
if
and the
Desmond
coaching.
Ritter and the coaching, I think they've done good. They've made good moves on the roster. I think their run game is going to be really good. Their line is solid, and the running backs are solid. Obviously, Bijan, I think, is going to have a monster year. If I mean Kyle Pitts is still there, being unused basically, which is insane and
Yeah.
infuriating.
Drake
Like
London.
they have Drake London, like they have plenty of talent on offense. Their defense is fine. Like it's not a terrible defense. So I think if Desmond Ritter can hit this year, they have a chance to win the division. Um, Other than that, I'm not sold on the Panthers or the Bucks. I've always been a Baker guy. I'm going to be rooting for Baker in
Me too.
Tampa, but just their roster and I just don't think is quite there. But I'm hoping that uh, the Bucks are at least going to be a little more competitive. But Saints are my pick, and I think the Falcons can do it if Desmond Ritter exceeds my expectations for him.
So I would absolutely sprinkle on the Bucks 10-1. I mean, you just gave every single reason why this division is awful. And I think you can do way worse than Baker Mayfield. Like, if you look around that division, like, would you rather have Baker Mayfield right now, or would you rather have Desmond Ritter? Like, I would rather have Baker Mayfield. Would you rather have Baker Mayfield, or would you rather have Bryce Young? I think for this year, I think I would rather have Baker Mayfield. Maybe it's close. And then again, it's between the Saints. Um, the Bucks have all their weapons, like Mike Evans, Godwin, like that. Like those are two really good receivers that I think are being undervalued. Like Mike Evans again, another guy who every single year is going to put up like 1,000 yards.
Next division is the NFC North. Uh, the team we just talked about, the Vikings, had a huge year last year in the regular season, did not translate to playoff success. Um, they are not the favorites to win the division again. The Lions are the favorites to win the division, plus 140. The Vikings are at plus 290. The Bears are plus 380, and the Packers are plus 400. So this is I checked the Packers at plus 400 as the fourth team is the best odds for any fourth team to win the division. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
this is technically the closest division, top to bottom.
Yeah.
Um, it is first year in the NFC North that it's not all about Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love is going to be the quarterback of the Packers. Justin Fields is getting some hype to make that next jump. For the Bears, I'm not totally sold on him making the next jump. Uh, the Vikings are maybe being a little undervalued at this point. I think the Lions being that much bigger favorites to win the division than them after the year the Vikings had last year and then not really losing that much, I think is kind of crazy. I do think the Vikings will take a step back from last year, but it's also asking a lot of the Lions to make that jump.
Yeah.
So I actually think there's value in the Vikings at plus 290.
Sure.
Um, I think the hype on the Lions has gone a little too far. I mean, I like Jared Goff. I like Dan Campbell. Like, I think their roster is really good. But I think the Vikings still have Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins still is churning out the same numbers every year that is successful in the regular season. And so I think the value's there on plus 290. So I'm picking the Vikings and betting the Vikings plus 290 to win the North.
Yep. I think that's good value. I agree with everything you said.
And I do think that this could be another division, talking about the AFC East, the second division that I think could get three playoff teams. We said the NFC East could too if the Giants can sneak into that third spot, but I think this is the only other division that could get three teams. I think the Vikings and Lions will both make the playoffs, and I think it's possible the Bears or the Packers, if one of them, if Justin Fields or Jordan Love can really hit and make a jump, then one of those teams could get the 7 seed and sneak into the playoffs.
Absolutely.
The NFC West, this has been the 49ers division. The last couple of years, obviously the Rams won a Super Bowl and then just disappeared off the face of the earth. Matt Stafford is still there. Matt Stafford has been talking about how he can't connect to any of the guys on his team. He doesn't know what to talk to them about. They're on their phones all the time, which is just like such a weird like thing to say publicly. Like I know part of it, it's like his wife's podcast, which is like adds a whole nother weird element to it that like some of these things are coming out on. But on Hard Knocks, like Aaron Rodgers is like has like handshake with Sauce Gardner where they're like smoking a joint and he's like getting the chain from Sauce and like all the young guys on the team seem to love him. So it's like I think maybe Matt Stafford is the issue, not the young guys on the team. Um, and so everything seems weird there. Uh, the Cardinals are going to be the worst team in the league. I think that's safe to say. Uh, and the Seahawks, I think, will take a step back from the team that they had last year. I think Geno Smith kind of had the dream season last year. I think he's not going to be as good as he was last year. So I think the 49ers pretty safely win this division. I mean, that's why they're minus 190, but I don't think anybody's even getting close to the 49ers in the West.
Yeah.
Even if Sam Darnold is the quarterback all year, the 49ers would win the West.
100%. 100%.
And I like Brock Purdy. Some people are saying Brock Purdy like was like a flash in the pan and it's going to be bad. And I don't think necessarily he's like going to have a legendary career, but like in the Kyle Shanahan system, I think Brock Purdy can do everything that Shanahan wants him to do.
Yep.
And he'll be fine. But I think Sam Darnold could do it too, honestly. I think the 49ers will be fine. So they're your pick too, I assume.
Absolutely.
So not really much on either of those other teams because I don't think they're very good. So we can just kind of get into the playoff picture. I have my teams from the AFC and NFC. For the AFC playoffs, I do think the Chiefs will get the 1 seed. I said I have to pick the Jets to win the AFC East, so I have the Jets as the 2 seed, Ravens as the 3 seed, Titans as the 4 seed winning their division. And then the Bills would then be the first wild card with the 5, the Bengals with the 6, and I do think the Dolphins would take the 7th. We would get 3 AFC East teams, Ravens, Bengals, and Jets, Bills out of those 2 divisions.
Say that one more time.
Chiefs, Jets, Ravens, Titans, division winners, and then Bills, Bengals, Dolphins, wild card.
So no Ravens.
No, I have Ravens winning the division.
Oh, Ravens winning the division. Okay, then we are in agreement there in the AFC.
Yeah, same teams.
Same teams.
Just flipping division winners for Jets, Bills.
Yeah.
NFC playoffs. I think the Eagles will still get the 1 seed if they win the division. The 49ers getting the 2 seed. We both have them winning their division. I picked the Vikings to win the NFC North, so I have them at the 3 seed, and the Saints will be the worst division winner at the 4 seed. And then the 3 wildcard teams I have are the Cowboys, Lions, and Packers. I'm picking as my 3rd wildcard team. Who are your 3 wildcard teams?
My three wild card teams. I will pick the Cowboys. I will pick the Lions. And I'll pick the Giants.
Yeah, pick the Giants. Why not? Um, so we're mostly on the same page in a lot of these. But the Super Bowl, I'm guessing we will have very different picks. I tried to be a little bit interesting. So my Super Bowl picks, I also just went with teams that I actually bet to win the Super Bowl. I made three Super Bowl bets. And I picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl over the Vikings. I bet both of those teams I thought had good value. I bet the Ravens 30-1, the Vikings 45-1 to win the Super Bowl. Those numbers have come way down, especially on the Ravens. I think if everything goes right with Lamar, I think this is the best weapons he's ever had and offensive coaching staff, like we talked about. So I think this is a really good spot. The third team I bet to win the Super Bowl, obviously, is the Jets. But those, I'm not going to pick the Jets to win the Super Bowl. I'm going to do something different. So I'm going Ravens over the Vikings.
Okay.
What
Ravens
do you
over the
got?
Vikings for Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I think the Chiefs make it back. I know it's chalk, but I think the Chiefs make it back. And from the NFC, God, the NFC is so bad. I'm going 49ers.
I know. Yeah. I don't blame you. I mean, I was looking at the NFC and I was like, I don't want to just pick the Eagles again. It's boring. But then I look at everybody else and I'm like, who in the NFC playoffs? Like, I don't think the Saints can do it. I don't think any of the wild card teams can do it. So I think it'll be the winner of if the 49ers and Vikings are the 2 and 3 seed, I think the winner of that game will make it to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
And so that's it. We can call it there. Super Bowl winners, the Ravens. For me, you have the Chiefs and the 49ers. Who wins? Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Chiefs back to back for Patrick Mahomes would not be surprising. But that's it for the NFL preview episode. Make sure to follow Ethan everywhere. Listen to NYG Daily if you're a New York Giants fan. And anything else, Ethan, or you good to
Nope,
go?
that's it. Good to go.
All right. Thanks for listening and talk to you guys next time.